In this video, we're going to show you to install an outer tie rod end on your Toyota Tundra located behind your front wheels. Using a 21mm socket, let's loosen and remove our lug nuts. Now that you have your lug nuts removed, grab that wheel, remove it, and set it aside. Now we want to go ahead and separate our outer tie rod here from the knuckle. Before we do this here, I'm going to go to the opposite side of the vehicle. It is raised and supported. I'm going to grab that wheel and just go ahead and crank that out. That's going to give us better access to that cotter pin and nut. Now we're going to go ahead and try and remove our cotter pin here. Our vehicle is pretty rusted, and part of our cotter pin here is, well, pretty much part of the nut itself. So we're just using a pair of cutters here. And ideally, most cases, once you bend the tabs down even on the other side, you can grab this side here with the cutters, pinch gently, and kind of rock it out. But like I said, ours is pretty much well rusted. It's just crumbling apart. And we're able to get out one of the cotter pin legs there. Go for that other one. There's the other side. We use our 18mm socket. I'm just going to tap this on. And we're tapping this on because our nut is pretty much rusted pretty bad. So we're going to tap that on. Try and zip that off. Lightly spray this down with some rust penetrant and let that soak. Now after you've let this soak for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and use our hammer and strike the knuckle right here. That should release our tie rod. Make sure you're wearing safety glasses when doing this job because metal and rust can fly off of this. With the tie rod separated, we're actually going to pop this back in. And we're just going to throw the nut on there just to hold this in place. We're not going to tighten it, just throw it on a couple threads. Now, the reason why we did this here is we want to stabilize this here. Our next step is to go ahead and loosen the jam nut on our inner tie rod. On our jam nut, we want to go ahead and loosen that. Now we did spray this down with some rust penetrant, and we're going to continue to do so. I want this to come off nice and easy. With the jam nut loose, we can remove our castle nut, pull this out. Now removing this here, we're going to count the amount of full revolutions it takes to remove this. Then we're going to go ahead and install the new tie rod end with the same amount of turns that it took to remove the old one. There's 12 turns. I like to take a crayon and I'm just going to put 12 here. They were there, I don't forget. Now we have it turn on 12. I'm going to bring out that jam nut. And we're going to remove our castle nut. And at this point here, I want to go ahead and install our ball joint into our knuckle. Go ahead and line up the tie rod end with the knuckle. You might have to push the stud left or right, whatever it is, to get that line to line up. Push that up and in. Now you want to pay attention to the position of the hole on the ball joint stud, because that's where you're going to have to put your cotter pin in. Install that castle nut, thread that down. Go ahead and tighten this down. And then we want to snug it down to 67 foot-pounds. Now at this point here, we're trying to install our cotter pin, but the hole itself is not lining up with the notch in the castle nut. So if that is not lining up and you can't get the cotter pin in, continue to tighten this nut until the next notch lines up. Never loosen this nut in order to fit the cotter pin. Install the cotter pin. And on the other side, you're going to take one of the tabs, you're going to pull up on it and bend it over the top of the stud. I like to tap it with the pliers here, and you can kind of roll it over. If it's not that long, that's totally fine. If you have excess, go ahead and use the cutters to snip that off, and then snip off that extra leg on the back. With this secured, you want to go ahead and make sure that your jam nut is tight. And you do want to make sure that the jam nut is nice and tight, so I'm just going to use a pair of heavy-duty pliers here. Grab a hold of that. Make sure that is nice and snug. Now, I'm going to go ahead and grab the tie rod end, and I'm going to go ahead and position our tie rod end so it's more flush. It's not cranked up one way or the other, pinching this boot. Take your wheel, line it up. Let's go ahead and install our lug nuts. Once we get all these started, we're going to go ahead and snug them down. Torque down your lug nuts to 83 foot-pounds. We're going to do this in a crisscross pattern. After finishing this installation, it's important to have an alignment done on your vehicle.
When only the best will do, demand TRQ. The only company that lets you view before you do. TRQ is committed to offering the highest quality aftermarket auto parts that are engineered for peace of mind. Thanks for using and viewing with TRQ.